Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love? Talking about games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 3,864 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. Well, today is the final day of 2024. There's so many new people here compared to last year. I just want to thank you again. This has been the greatest year in the channel's history. I've been doing YouTube since 2009, this channel since 2015. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of this channel, and to finally have people coming in such large numbers, engaging, commenting, is just wonderful. If I don't say it again, or if I say it too many times, thank you all to every single one of you. Have a happy and safe new year. And usually at the end of the year, I like to do a top 10 games of 2024. To be honest, this year I have not beaten as many games as I typically do, and I've really not played that many modern releases. If I was to do a top 10 of modern releases I've played, I think I've played 4 games. Like, it's crazy. And then with the Xbox 360 craziness that happened this year, I originally had a backlog I wanted to address, which I got through about half of it until, once again, I got stuck on the Xbox 360 train. But we still did beat about 10, 14 games, so we're going to go through and just briefly discuss them. As well as I'm just going to talk about the best and worst of 2024 in general for myself. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out.
There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Well, once again, the 360 really kind of set this channel on a trajectory I did not foresee. And I covered over 200 Xbox 360 games this year. In the process of doing that, I did manage to beat a handful of them. And one of the ones that I didn't even really think about that I had beaten until I was going back and looking at the games I beat this year. It's kind of a cheat, but whatever. And that is WarTech Sen no Ronde. I think that's how you pronounce it. So this is a very unique game. It's basically an arena fighter where you control a mech pilot, and it's a one-on-one fighting game with another mech. And then as the levels progress, you go through kind of a tournament style until you get to the end, where the last fight is against a regular, like not a regular, but a big boss mech, and then that's it. And yeah, I'm saying I beat it because I beat that version once, but it's a fighting game. What are you going to do? If you beat the tournament, technically, yes, you have beaten it. Now, there is a sequel to this game that I think was never released in the West, and this is one of those games where you're either you love it or you hate it. I, unfortunately, am not someone who really loves the game. I did not enjoy myself playing it all that much. I managed to snag it for $18 off of Amazon somehow, and I thought it was disc only. It came, and it was in immaculate, complete in-box condition. And one of those ones where, if this looks interesting to you, it is a very unique game. I'm not a huge fighting fan, but one that, to be honest, I could see myself selling or getting rid of just to get to someone who would appreciate it more. But that is one of the few games on the 360 I did beat this year. Another one that I beat that was donated to the channel was Fear. So First Encounter Assault Recon. More or less almost a first-person psychological horror game, but it uses a lot of old-school Doom sensibility as far as progressing through the level. There's not waypoints. You're not constantly told where to go. You have to look at the lay of the land, pay attention to what doors have opened or not, where enemies are now coming up. Enemies don't just endlessly spawn. There is a storyline to it, but to be honest, I played it largely with the audio down, just because I don't want to, I'm playing games usually at night when my daughter's asleep in the next room, and something like this, I don't want to have blasting, so, but even without that, gameplay incredible, the slowing down of time mechanic, the way the enemies would take bullets to them, super fun. I said it when I talked about it last time, but it really felt like a game that had modern sensibilities, but old school game design, and something that I hadn't experienced, which makes sense. The game was made in 2005, especially when I played Half-Life 2, the brief amount I played it last week. These type of games, I wish we could go back to, games that do not... It's not even the hand-holding as much as it's the trust of the game design. So rather, it's kind of like show me rather than tell me, and allow me to solve even the navigation of the level instead of it being an arbitrary puzzle or an arbitrary this or that then someone's going to comment, oh wow, look at that red thing over there. I bet we could hit it. Just such a fun time. Really enjoyed playing it. Now, this is the last game I beat this year, unless something crazy happens today or tomorrow, as I am filming this on December 30th. Could not believe how much fun this was. I should have, I guess, because I really enjoyed South Park: The Fractured But Whole. Didn't beat that one, but I did beat South Park: The Stick of Truth, which also was made by Obsidian. So Obsidian are the people who made Alpha Protocol, Dungeon Siege 3. Like, they were kingmakers on the Xbox 360. And what's funny is as I'm going through and playing these 360 games, I am starting to recognize some more interesting developers to keep an eye out for. You know, South Peak Games, that's another one that's kind of, you know, they're not always great, but they make unique games. And, you know, this one was just such a treat to play. Humor is on point. I have never seen more animated nutsacks in a game, probably in my life, and nor do I care to see more of it. The summons were fun. The quests were fun. Just everything about it was enjoyable. It's short. It is an enjoyable 13 to 20 hour experience. If you have never played this, do yourself a favor. Even if you don't like turn-based RPGs, this is kind of the modern Super Mario RPG because it takes a turn-based style and then makes it active combat in a way that after playing this one, now looking at the Fractured But Whole, it wasn't made by Obsidian, so I can guess why it changed, but I cannot believe they changed because the gameplay in this game is so tight and so fun. So yeah, South Park: South Park: The Stick of Truth. Wonderful game, super cheap. Go out and pick that one up right now. Now, another game that I technically beat, because it's really a way of beating it. It's not this one, it's the DLC sequel, and that is Backbreaker Vengeance. So Backbreaker Vengeance takes my favorite part of Backbreaker, which, for if you guys' quick summary, it uses the Euphoria engine, which was later bought by Rockstar. So the engine you have in Grand Theft Auto 5, in Grand Theft Auto 4, in Red Dead Redemption 2, what makes it super realistic when bodies fall down or when things get tackled. It was originally developed for a football game. Well, they have a mode called Halfback, where you have to basically score a touchdown from end zone to end zone, and they'll put different parameters in there, and then the enemies will try to tackle you. In Backbreaker, there's 100 stages to it, but you have to beat them all in one sitting. In Backbreaker Vengeance, they split that out into 5 rounds, over 20 different rounds. Now, caveat being, they get a hell of a lot harder, and they add more nuance on top of it. So now you have a button to jump enemies, you have a button to slide under enemies, and it's better overall gameplay in my opinion, but so much harder to get through them. And I got through all 100 stages of the, I think it's called Halfback, maybe it's not, but incredible. I'm so bummed that this game is DLC only because I'm still recommending anyone to play it. So if you have to crack your system to get this gem on it, do it. Do yourself a favor. I am not a huge fan of sports games. I love football, but this is not really a football game as much as it's just a fun arcade football experience. Like if they released this as an arcade game, it'd be a huge hit. It's so much fun. All right, let's pivot off the 360 very briefly here because we are going to cover some of the other games I beat this year. Now, I have talked about some of these. I even did a video about backlog to beat, but we're going to talk about some of the other games I beat this year too. One of the ones was Unicorn Overlord. So this would probably be my game of the year right now. I really, really enjoyed this. It's made by Vanillaware, which is another more modern company that I find myself drawn to. They made the Dragon's Crown series. They're known for very over-the-top animations and art styles, as well as proportions in their characters. And while nothing is quite as ridiculous as you'll see in Dragon's Crown, there are some pretty ridiculous characters in this game. It's more or less a modern take on an ogre battle style of game, but not quite as hands-off. So you'll get a squad leader, and then you'll have the ability to assign 4 other people in that party, and eventually you'll have to unlock the ability to do that. At first you just start with 1 or 2. In the battle, you can send them off to do tasks. They'll have abilities that can be done outside of battle, so things like dropping arrows or doing a big swipe, and it's just, it's a lot of fun. It's very niche. This game may not be for everyone, but if it is for you, if you like stuff like Octopath Traveler or old school turn-based RPGs, but I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. Highly recommend that one if that sounds interesting. All right, back to the 360. This was probably the most shocking game I played this year as far as ones that, if you would ask me what I would have beaten this year, this one would not have been on the list. I don't know if it just hit at the right time, if it had been nagging at me, if it was just one of those things where I wanted to experience it, or the fact that it reminded me so much of Lost at the beginning of it. And that was Tomb Raider 2013. I really enjoyed playing this. I know it sets Lara Croft on a trajectory that even to this day is kind of lackluster. There's a bunch of, essentially a squad of people she gets saddled with that, once again, I played this game with the volume down. So once I got to the part of the game where you're dealing with the big football dude and I think like the ship girl, or basically her friends, like her merry band of characters, I could care less about them. I kind of didn't care, wasn't listening, skipped the dialogue. So maybe that's why I didn't have as negative an opinion on it as some people otherwise did. And the fact that you're using a bow and arrow instead of her classic double pistols. But if you remove the Lara Croft name from it, as far as Tomb Raider goes, and just have it be like Kate from Lost or something like that, it was very engaging and thrilling gameplay. And to be honest, I got over the Tomb Raiders, so this was the kind of reimagining reboot that actually was interesting, especially because as a character, she was written in a way where she wasn't all-powerful or so assured of herself. Like, she fails numerous times, has to get rescued numerous times, so it's not like today's modern stuff where it's just so, you know, like, whatever, okay. But really fun game, really full of set pieces. Like, they were trying to compete with the Uncharted's, and I gotta say, they really did achieve that. But I can tell that the story-wise is probably a little lackluster. Though they did get the double pistols in the game at some point, and when they did, it was a very, very big moment, and cool the way they did it, at least. Not on par with, say, God of War 2018, but still something where it showed, it was a head nod to the audience, even if it was only in a cameo. Alright, 2 games that I beat on the PS2 this year, which there is a third one that I do intend on beating, which we'll do a backlog to beat video next week, which we'll talk about 2025. But Max Payne 1 and 2, so if you can believe it, I'd never beaten these, and yes, I played them on the PS2, not on the PC, because once again, I am a console pleb. I know just enough to know what I don't know, and I do not know the first thing about setting up proper drivers, proper specs, proper settings. All the reasons why I really dislike a lot of modern gaming now, too, is that the developers of these games, they intend, or they basically, they rely on the community to know this stuff or the gamers to fix it. That's why they use the same Unreal 5 engine, which is unoptimized for the different games that it's being used on, and then can make it so that you need specs that are through the wazoo for something that if you saw it on the 360 generation or PS4, something like The Order 1886, looks amazing. And that game is 10 years old now versus something that just came out today where it doesn't look as good. And that just gets down to laziness of developers. I mean, what are you going to say about it? But yeah, Max Payne 1 and 2, I really enjoyed playing both of them. Very funny how between the two, the actor playing Max Payne changes. The first Max Payne as a father, Holy hell, does it hit a lot harder than I expected. Not in a great way, to be honest. And then Max Payne 2 is very much kind of a femme fatale, this and that. But cool noir-style stories, very interesting. The comic book presentation, yeah, hit or miss for me. But the actual gameplay, super fun. I actually probably prefer Max Payne 1 to 2, just because Max Payne 1 felt a little bit more arcadey, if that makes sense. 2 got into some situations where it was a lot harder. But just dumb fun, wasn't holding your hand, allowed you to figure out what to do. Really enjoyed both of them. All right, so for my 360 most anticipated game that kind of when I started on this journey, I really wanted it. I managed to snag it around June or July for a deal. It is still about a $100 game, and this game is not gonna be for everybody, but I would say it can be if you have the patience and if you know what you're getting yourself into. And that is Sip Saga. So I put 72 hours into this game. This was my most played game of the year across all systems, even modern systems. And a lot of people say it's like Monopoly Magic. I don't feel like that's the best way of advertising it, because yes, well, that is a true statement. The way this game plays out is much more like a traditional tabletop board game in a video game sense, much like Gloomhaven, something like that. Now, deck building is important in it, but you unlock cards as you play through rounds. And the hardest thing in this game is just going to be wrapping your mind around all of the concepts as far as how damage is dealt, order of operations in damage, how to maximize your bonuses, and then just the recall of knowing what the opponent has and what the different cards do and what the different cards can counter you. So that's a lot. That's a lot to take. When I started this game on the first round, I lost it 3 times. And that's just a simple square. You're given a pretty decent deck. But over probably, I don't know, those 3 rounds and then the next 2 where you finally get to the first match where you're fighting 3 people simultaneously, once it clicks, you can start developing a strategy. You can start going and getting the cards you like and setting it up the way you like it, and then manipulating the results in a way that you wouldn't be able to with a human player, and was just a phenomenal time. Now, the campaign, in my opinion, is about 10 to 15 hours too long. It probably could have ended without having to have you go through both choices, but I digress. But as far as fun, unique experiences that I've never experienced on any other game, this one delivered. And outside of, having to have that much recall on everything, when you do plan it accordingly, when you do set up a tactic and see it go through, it is immensely satisfying and something that I would love to play with people if I ever get the chance. And would be interesting to see if it came back and anything. Because all the cards are really cool too, because all the cards really play on mythologies. So you'll see things from all different kinds of cryptids, like the Banyan and, the Wendigo, the Mothman. Like, they have cards in this game, so it's kind of crazy. The illustrations are cool too. Anyways, phenomenal game. All right. This was the first game I beat this year. It was on the PS4. It just got a remaster on the PS5 because reasons I don't know. And I know a lot of people love to trash Naughty Dog because that's the thing to do right now. And I'm going to agree, because The Last of Us Part 2, what the hell were they thinking? I still don't know. Now, gameplay-wise, very good. Story-wise, it's just it's like, imagine that you give someone a pristine T-bone steak and they decide to grind it up and make hamburgers with it. But then even on top of that, instead of hamburgers, they make some fancy steak tartare burger where it uses a lettuce wrap bun, and then it just, why? Like, I don't get it. And the funny thing too is that with the way they told the story, where they wanted you to see the ramifications of Joel's decisions, and then the, kind of how, shades of gray, there are no, like, it's a story that may have hit harder for me in, say, 2010, but in 2020, and it's when it came, or 2019 when it came out, especially 2024 right now, it's just so overdone. And to be honest, if they wanted to do a bold decision, and I've heard other people say this too, so it hasn't come from just me, but other people said it too, the story's told in the wrong order. You should really start the game as Abby, have her team get taken out, only to find out the person taking it out is Ellie, and then go back in time and see why that is. And if you had done that, I still am not happy with that direction, but the sheer hubris of telling someone, hey, which spoilers, by the way, everyone knows Abby kills Joel in the first hour of the game. So you mean to tell me I'm going to play 10 hours trying to kill this girl, I'm not going to kill her, and then I'm not only going to not kill her, I'm going to have to then play as her, going through and then seeing how, oh, maybe we were the jackasses the whole time, even though this person still killed Joel. Like, it just doesn't resonate. I'm sorry. If you want me to look back on The Last of Us 1 and assume that this Firefly organization that was known for blowing people up was going to somehow create a cure and then disseminate it to the world without holding it hostage or anything else going wrong, it's stupid. I'm sorry, it's stupid. But gameplay-wise was fun, and I'm glad to have played through it, but man, I just can't understand why they did that. And now looking at Intergalactic, really great sound design, but anyways, moving on from that, the only PS1 game I beat this year, which I was hoping to beat more, I wanted to beat Kudelka, but I didn't get around to it, but a game I did beat was Crusader No Remorse. And this is probably one of the greatest PS1 games I've played that no one talks about. It reminds me of a 2.5, an isometric version of Fear, in all honesty. You play as a guy who looks like Boba Fett. It's supposed to take place in a kind of Star Wars world, and it has cutscenes with real actors that are just so cheesy and so bad in FMV scenes, and I love every minute of it. You have guys getting blown up, and you can pull out your weapons and take out enemies left and right. The level designs are smart and clever. It's a long game too. Really, really liked it. It is a PC game too. There's a PC only sequel that I would love to check out someday, but it's like a $30 game on the PS1. Highly recommended if that at all sounds interesting to you. That was one of my favorite games of the year, bar none. All right. A couple more Xbox 360 games I beat. So this was a download-only game. It is available on the PS3 as well. And that game was on my backlog to beat. It was actually the first the Xbox 360 game I beat this year. There is no physical release because it is Vandal Hearts Flames of Blood. I just call it Vandal Hearts 3. And I gotta tell you, for someone who loves Vandal Hearts 1 and 2, Vandal Hearts 3 was a nice bite-sized version of those games. So this is a hearkening to old like download-only games back in 2009, 2010. Back then, they really had sort of an identity of being a shorter experience. So you don't have these long sweeping games or these microtransaction fueled games, etc. Like this one was very much just a shortened version of the more popular, predecessors. And it's really good. It borrows more from Vandal Hearts 1 than Vandal Hearts 2. So a lot of Vandal Hearts 2's DNA just kind of gets swept by the wayside with the dual turn system, which I really liked, but not everyone did. But I gotta tell you, really, really enjoyable game. I think you can still get it on the Xbox One or the Series X. It is on the PS3 store and all that still. Really, really liked it. If the graphics are terrible, let's be honest. It's not going to win any graphics awards. But as far as gameplay goes, if you like Vandal Hearts, it's a turn-based tactical game. When you can, the big thing with this one is you can either use your melee weapon or your ranged weapon, and then when you use either, you can trigger one of your buddies to attack at the same time. And that's kind of where the gameplay loop is really fun. But it also is very limiting because, to be honest, it always makes sense to use the range attack because there's no possible chance of counterattack, as well as you can kill the enemy before they even get to you, and you can trigger the other people around you to fire too. Really, really fun. Can't recommend it more, and it's in a nice bite-sized version of Vandal Hearts. All right, now the last kind of retro game we're going to talk about here is another turn-based tactical game, which I love the Fire Emblem series to death. I've been told that I need to check out the Shining Force series on Genesis, so I finally did with Shining Force 1. Really fun with that too. I can see why it has such a lasting legacy. I do have Shining Force 2. I don't have any other ones because I think the other ones are on the Saturn, and I'd have to get rid of a kidney to pick up those. But as far as Shining Force 1 goes, Solid story. It's available on, I think it's available on the Nintendo Switch online store or the monthly subscription thing. But just overall, phenomenal game. Really, really fun. Can kind of get difficult at times, as well as you have a chance of, you got to be careful with your team. You can definitely bullet sponge people or get people leveled up in a way that can make a detriment to the other players. And it gets pretty damn hard towards the end of it, but I did manage to beat it and really enjoyed playing it. Alright, so last Xbox 360 game we're going to cover right now, and this probably, arguably, would be the best of the batch as far as the most mass appeal, and that is Asura's Raph. And this is such an undeniably fun game. Now, a lot of people will say play the first stage, and if you're not hooked, then, you should be hooked. To be honest, I found the first stage a little too over the top. As someone who's not an anime fan, not into that thing, I think it's a little bit too grandiose, going and falling from space into a giant mouth of a creature that's the size of the earth and punching it in the mouth and having it shatter. Like, okay, we're going major Dragon Ball Z vibes here. But if you get past that, then you can start seeing where the game is going, where you have the kind of the god characters. Your guy gets betrayed, coming out of the depths. There's so much just over-the-top action and a good storyline to boot that I really had a great time playing with this. This was the first 360 game I beat during the 360 series, and it was the one where I had so much fun I could not put it down. I beat this over the course of a weekend, loved every minute of it. I have not played the 4th chapter yet. That was a DLC only one. So I know that supposedly changes the story, but it seemed like it ended without it being on a cliffhanger. So I don't know. That's definitely something I should revisit and finally beat. But a wonderful game that I'm not going to talk too much more about because for some reason Capcom claims my videos when I show footage from this game. I don't know why. I don't know why. But yeah, there you go. Capcom did that on another game too. They did it on Lost Planet 3. So I'm not quite sure what's up with Capcom. Alright, then the last two we're going to talk about video game wise are the games I beat on the Nintendo Switch. Which is funny. I played so many Switch games last year, or the year before that. I played almost nothing on the Switch, other than the ones we're going to talk about. And the one game I really beat this year was The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. Really liked it. Loved the way it took the classic map from A Link to the Past and melded it with Breath of the Wild's overworld map and then made it make sense as far as how the two interacted. Having a separate Mount Lanayru and a separate Death Mountain was a brilliant method because the Mount Lanayru was the one that you've seen in, say, Link to the Past. And just playing as Zelda and having this cool new mechanic of being able to break the world and go into this and that, it was fun. I do agree with my buddy Rewind Mike that yeah, it can be cumbersome going through the menus, selecting all your things, but I didn't find it so much of a detriment that I could deal with it. And overall, a solid entry into the much lauded Legend of Zelda series. It's not my favorite one, but it definitely is up there with my favorite games of the year, and really cool to see them make a game like this. Now, if we can only get a game like this that has Link as a protagonist and is a normal, regular Zelda 2D game, I was hoping that would kind of happen after you beat it, because you do get to play as Link at times in this one, but anyway, I digress. And then the last Switch game we're going to talk about was one that I had never heard of, and it was nominated for Game of the Year, and then when I talked to people, they're like, hell yeah, how do you not know about this game though? And that is Batro. I gotta tell you, I really enjoyed it. I did. I was wrong. I really enjoyed playing it. It's a lot of fun. It is just basically a poker game. It's a roguelike, which at this point, it's just an arcade game, guys. Like, it's a score attack. And I'm not the most math proficient. And what happens with this game is that eventually you get to the point where you need to start figuring out how multipliers are going to interact together. And I just don't have that kind of brain capacity to go off into the stratosphere with it. I had one run where I probably could have gotten farther in that. And after you basically beat 8 rounds or 6 rounds, I think it's 8 rounds, you have to then decide to go on to endless mode. And because I clicked so fast out of it, I accidentally clicked end. and I'm still pissed about it, and I haven't picked it up since then. I found the strategy of this going for flushes the most reliable one. What happens is you get a hand drawn to you, and then you get a certain amount of discards and a certain amount of hands you can play to reach a skill target. And then as you play, you can then increase the amount of points you get with the jokers that give you modifiers. And then there's other things you can do, like you can modify the cards where you can give them multipliers. You can give them basically wild status. And then other jokers will allow you to do stuff like do a straight with 4 cards, or do a flush with multiple suits. You can have a flush of ace, or no, with hearts and diamonds, or clubs and spades, etc., etc. And that's where people get addicted onto it, because it is a lot of fun. And it's nice to see this game get so much recognition. But man, as someone who had not heard of it, who is very invested in the gaming scene, the amount of vitriol coming at people like us who are questioning why this was nominated for Game of the Year was was a little interesting, because I had not quite seen that happen before. But yes, that is it for the games. Now we're going to talk about a little bit more here before the end of it. I watched very little television this year. I watched very little movies this year. I watched 3 movies, actually. I saw Godzilla -1 minus color, which loved Godzilla -1 last year. The minus color version was just seeing it in black and white. As cool as it was to see it in black and white, it just didn't have the same impact on me as it had seeing it in color, but I just wanted to support that movie because I had a great time with it. I did see the new Deadpool and Wolverine movie, which, to be honest, I enjoyed it, but that was about it. That was about it. I cannot get down with the Marvel movies, and even with this one, other than seeing Hugh Jackman in the actual Wolverine costume, seeing the Gambit bits and all that, the storyline it was like, oh, that's what you did. Once again, that's what they did with the story. You have Hugh Jackman and Deadpool, and you go to the land beyond time, and then you have this, Charles Xavier has a sister, which, okay, like, how does, like, you can't keep doing this soap opera bull crap where it's like, suddenly there's a twin you didn't know about, or, oh, it's the evil stepmom. That, like, I don't know, and I know it's based in the comics, but just, yeah, it seemed like a lame choice. And then the last movie I saw, which may get a few of you to unsub because I actually did enjoy it, was Wicked. So I don't know if you guys know, but I was pursuing being a professional musical theater actor for several years, and I am very familiar with the book, the songbook of Wicked, as Fiero was a part that I had, considered maybe trying to get someday. It's not my favorite musical because it's largely not something that I'm the star of or I would have a huge role in it. But as far as a movie goes, they really did a great job with the cinematography, with the film setting, with being true to the source material, not putting in too much modern day this and that. Other than a little bit of questionable passing of timeness, which I think just can't be avoided due to the nature of the movie. And for a 3-hour movie, it didn't seem to take all that long. But I enjoyed it. Yeah. So there you go. As far as television goes, I basically saw no TV this year. I saw House of the Dragon Season 2, which ended at okay. And then Squid Game Season 2, which I just binge watched all of it. I loved the first season of Squid Game. And the same damn thing happened with this. They filmed seasons 2 and 3 back to back. Just be honest, guys, this is Squid Game Season 2 Part 1. The new games are incredible. The manufactured scenario to get the main character back in the games, you had to do it because it wasn't intended to have a second season. I'm glad they did. It is just as gripping. It's just a little irritating because it's only 7 episodes, and you know when they start going, oh, we're not going to get the whole game. Like something's going to come up. But the big conflict they introduce at the end of episode 3 is probably the highlight of the whole season. The 2 new games that you get to see are incredible, as well as there's another kind of special games here and there. But anyways, really enjoyed that. I just think it's going to take until season 3 comes out before we can truly judge it, because then it'll be like, okay, this was a phenomenal season because now you can watch the rest, because it's basically half a season. It's like when in Walking Dead when they would have a mid-season break. That's more or less what just happened, which I hated that too. God, the amount of these, this is like the worst of all worlds. Either give me weekly, which I prefer, or give me it all at once. Don't break it up into these chunks. You know, they did that with Cobra Kai, which I don't watch anymore, but having like part 3, part 4, part 5, or what they did with Stranger Things season 2, where it was part 1 and 2, I hate that. I hate that so much. But anyways, that's what you get for this week, guys. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.